Welcome back, fans. It's been a slow night tonight. That being the case though, with no current events, let's have a fun history lesson. And what better subject than the brief history of creepy clowns? Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with those rascals from a few years ago in 2016. Around the month of August, there was an increase in killer clown sightings all around the US. But did you know that we were infested by bloody bozos way before then? In 1924, US audience met a bitter and vengeful clown in the silent film He Who Gets Slapped. And then we had the clown prince of crime himself, the Joker, who made his first appearance in the comic book scene in Batman #1 on April 25th, 1940. However, I think we all can attribute the modern-day case of claustrophobia in the West to at least two certain killer clowns. One of the influences was the media coverage of John Wayne Gacy, a serial killer who occasionally dressed up as Pogo the Clown. Then of course we have Pennywise the Dancing Clown, the magical cosmic killer clown from the story It by Stephen King, who made his appearance in 1986. Oh, well, it looks like we're gonna have to cut class a little short tonight. Now let's see who that could be at this hour.
Well, if it isn't Maskino, the horror community's Deadpool. Except half as funny and twice as ugly.
Ah, if it isn't my good buddy Baron von Pasta. Say, how have you been keeping since you murdered all those people at that last narrator's get-together? You looked like you caught a bad case of being shot by me before you left. Hope you're feeling better.
Oh, Maskino, always making funny, made-up jokes that aren't true. Hey, how about we start the story and just move right along?
It's a full moon on a Saturday, for crying out loud.
My brother, Alex, shouted over his spooky Halloween mix. His head periodically popped out of the plywood abomination covering his lawn like a human whack-a-mole.
There's no way I'm gonna miss it.
I sighed and zipped up my jacket. Even during the day, the early October wind was biting. Don't you think this is a bit much? I asked. No one is trick-or-treating this year.
I won't be outdone. The Hendersons are into it.
His hand whipped out of the maze and pointed aggressively to the yard across the street. The neighbor's intimidating display consisted of a single orange bag of leaves with a jack-o'-lantern face on the front. Every year, Alex adds new pieces to his already elaborate Halloween decorations. That creature had now evolved into this short maze, starting on the sidewalk and ostensibly ending at the front door. My sister-in-law gives out the candy and Alex operates a new jump scare from somewhere within. I think this year he was a giant trapdoor spider or something. He even built a chicken door halfway through in case kids need to bail. My brother has many interesting feelings about the holiday. One of which is that candy should be earned, and that the more of it he keeps for himself, the more he has won. I love him anyway. I felt a tug on my hand. Can I go in yet, Dad? Lily asked. I told her to hang on until Uncle Alex gave the all clear. He was still tearing through the maze, turning props around and throwing blankets over the grislier scenes. If he wanted to use my 5-year-old as a test subject, he'd have to tone it down to the before 7 o'clock setting. Maybe he really thought he'd learned something from a test run, but I think he was just excited to share his passion with someone else. Lily hopped around in excitement. The cardboard discs sandwiching her threatened to fall apart with every jump. We had sat down one night and Googled costume ideas, but her mind was made up from the get-go. She insisted on being a button. Whatever, it was super easy, and her costume was already done a month ahead of the date. Celebratory sounds grew louder as my brother emerged from the entrance. "Okay, kiddo, are you ready?" Alex asked in a loopy ghost voice. Lily nodded and bolted forward. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! It's dangerous to go alone." He grinned at me as he untied a line of string. Out on the verge, a dummy Alex had intended to be a clown was propped up in a chair. He made it from his clothes, stuffed with more clothes, and then threw a clown wig on it. I assumed he'd refine it before the big day. Right then, it was just a lump of laundry, sporting a polka dot shirt and a wig. A single foil balloon was tied to the arm of the chair. Alex handed it to Lily, giving her this whole speech about how the balloon would keep her safe, and how important it was to hang on to it. I liked this new touch. I think a lot of parents would get anxious setting their kids onto a stranger's property where they can't see them. The balloons keep track of where everyone is and help to assuage those fears. Though, I wondered if he'd considered who's supposed to give the balloons out. Alex told Lily to count to 30 and made for his hiding spot. I helped her count all the way to 30 and then she took off into the maze. I watched her balloon bob around. It would speed up abruptly or slowly round corners. I heard a growl from a low-quality speaker ring out above the ambient Halloween music, followed by a little yelp from Lily. The balloon retreated and stopped. I could picture her gathering her courage. Sure enough, the balloon started making progress again. I stood on the sidewalk smiling to myself and shuffled my feet to stay warm. I was shocked to attention when I suddenly sensed movement nearby. I took a step back as 3 figures shambled past me without a word. I'd been idly glancing around in boredom that entire time and hadn't seen them approach. The only car parked on the street was mine. I caught their profiles as they went. The person in the lead took great loping steps, throwing the weight of their bulky costume ahead of them. Their torso was conversely thin with saggy skin. Thin hairs popped out of the top of their pale head. The middle one almost seemed to glide forward. Theirs was the least intricate costume, as they simply looked like someone hunched over in a burlap sack. I thought they must be on wheels somehow. Trailing the trio was someone who looked to be attending a masquerade. I caught a flash of black contacts in the peripheral of their mask. They paid me absolutely no mind, like I wasn't even there. Must be friends of Alex's, I settled on. If anyone knew people that would get that into Halloween so early, it was my brother. I was going to make a joke about needing more balloons, but they had already rounded the first corner of the maze. Lily's balloon was more than halfway through when I heard that growl again, tripped by the strangers. They must have been moving really fast, not exactly allowing time to stop and smell the corpses. Lily's balloon hit a straightaway near the end when I heard a startled squeak from her. The cry cut off abruptly and the balloon wavered like a fishing bobber. It went end to end of that longer corridor as if Lily was sprinting back and forth. It came to a halt and then just floated away. Lily had let go. I watched the balloon drift into the sky, feeling a cold sweat break out of my skin. The tense music from that stupid Halloween CD lent an air of ridiculousness to how I was feeling. "Lily," I called out, trying to keep the concern from my voice. No response from anyone. "Lily?" I yelled into the first 5 feet of the maze. I heard wood scraping on wood off to my right. I ran to the edge of the maze and saw those 3 adult trick-or-treaters exiting through the chicken door. I expected them to say something, either to me or each other, but they quietly made for the sidewalk. "Hey!" The tall, pale one with the weird body stopped and turned to look at me. Their tiny yellow eyes narrowed even further in confusion. Yeah, you. Who are you people? The tall one looked around, its too wide mouth drawn in a grimace. The other two stopped on the sidewalk and waited for their companion. My eyes couldn't even focus on the one in the rough cloak. The tall one's gaze finally fell on the clown dummy behind me. It replaced the hairs on its head with bright red tufts sprouting from its scalp. Multicolored splotches broke out all over their body. With a look of satisfaction, it backed away again. What the hell? I started, noticing I was still upset with it. Contentment gave to rage as its massive mouth flashed into a snarl, bearing countless grimy teeth. It roared and wobbled towards me. I fell back onto the grass and scrambled for the maze. Self-preservation screamed in tandem with concern for my daughter. In a terrified frenzy, I rammed into the flimsy plywood walls. I kept shouting Lily's name until everything was leveled. The world and I spun as I poured over the ruined decorations. It was impossible. Lily went in, and I would have seen her come out. She had to be there. By the time I felt Alex shaking me back to my senses, the trio was gone. I collapsed when I found half of her button costume. The cardboard all mangled and torn. My mind reeling as to the origin of the tiny red flecks, peppering the crumpled costume. Before the police put curtains up, some neighbors came around to take pictures and tried to congratulate Alex on outdoing himself with the crime scene. We're still being questioned on Lily's disappearance, and apparently I'm being treated with a great deal of suspicion. The investigators are at least humoring bringing those trick-or-treaters in for questioning. Alex maintains he has no idea who they were and says he never even saw them. The only theory I dare to hold is those three kidnapped Lily and concealed her as they escaped, and the transformation that thing went through. The way it seemed like a nocturnal predator caught in the light of day, that feeling I got that I shouldn't be able to look at them. I think it all comes back to our early Halloween activities. Halloween started for a reason, and I think we enjoyed the protection our numbers provided. Similarly, I think they enjoyed the camouflage. I can only imagine the calamity when none of that happens this year. Thank you again for having me on, Maskino. And don't listen to what everyone says. You're actually quite good at narrating. I, at least, think you're fantastic.
Well, thank you, Baron. That was actually really nice of you to say. And hey, you know what? I'm sorry I shot you after you murdered those friends of ours last year. I mean, I'd still do it again, but with less Oh, you hung up already. Well, that's all the time we have tonight, kids. See you all very soon.